to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I am recapping episode 5 of P-Valley titled Belly. Y'all, this episode gave us so much to unpack. We got little bits of nuggets of information to kind of fill in the gaps of some of the characters and their backstories, which I think we've all kind of been hoping for, where it's like, girl, what's your tea? What's your tea? How did you arrive here? We're really getting into the meat and potatoes of the character development. I'm a huge fan of great character development. I love when it's properly executed. I love when the timing and the toning makes sense. So I was really pleased with this episode, but it is a lot to unpack, so let's just jump right in. First of all, this episode was titled Belly. My ghetto ass was super excited because I'm thinking it's about to be like paying homage to Hype Williams. Belly is one of my favorite hood movies. And let's just be clear, we don't love Belly because it was a cinematic masterpiece in terms of plot line and all this stuff like that. We like Belly for the cinematography and for the cameos and for the quotable moments. So that's what I was expecting, but I started following Katori Hart, who is the writer, director, showrunner of P-Valley, and she provided a lot of background about this episode, and it was actually titled Belly in reference to the biblical story of Jonah and the well, where he stays in the whale's belly for 3 days. Little bit of a theology lesson here, just back up a little bit. So in the Bible, Jonah is called to be a prophet. God is like, you the one. And Jonah is like, nah, I'm straight. I'm going to go on this cruise. And so God, casts down his wrath and creates this storm. And all of the sailors are like, oh, he looking for you. You can go. So the sailors are like, we need to get to our destination. You're the cause of this storm. So we'll just kick you off board and then we can move on with our day. So they throw him overboard. He winds up in the belly of a whale for 3 days and 3 nights. And then the whale throws him up on the shore. So this whole episode is an allegory for that biblical story. Oh, that rhyme, check me out. So a few key points. First of all, y'all see my pen? I'm out here like with full notes because I just want to be thorough. So if you noticed, when Mercedes is in the jail and there's a trans woman named Nineveh, that's also another biblical reference. Nineveh is a town where Jonah was supposed to go and warn people of God's impending wrath. And the trans woman Nineveh was just like, can y'all please put me in the women's prison? And this is our first taste of like overt transphobia, where the guard Jesse is like, I don't make that decision. God made that decision. You're going to be over here with the men. Upsetting. Also, she made mention of the fact that the bars were supposed to symbolize like the whale's bones, and that while actually both Autumn and Mercedes, this episode was really about both of them kind of coming to terms with some of their past choices. So she is in the belly of the whale, which is this jail cell where she's having to actually confront her mom about her mom just not being a great mom. Y'all know how I feel about Mercedes' mom. She can really go. I'm over her. I was really happy that even by the end of that sermon that she did, where it was really just emotional manipulation, that Mercedes still wasn't moved and was like, you're dead to me. And I was like, good for you. Sometimes we need to cut family members off. So I'm a huge fan of thematic references in shows, in movies, when things tie into something that we're all familiar with, where there's a callback to something that we all know, which is the story of Jonah and the whale. So I think that it was very well executed. So the episode opens where the Pink is finally getting its eviction notice. So now the cat's out of the bag. All the girls know that they're in trouble. And another thing that I wanted to point out, I don't know if I made mention of this, but the security guard, not Diamond, not Fine Ass, the other one, who I guess kind of helps Uncle Clifford manage the books, was saying, you know, I have 3 strikes. If I can't work here, where else am I going to go? That's something that we really need to point out as not only a humanizing moment for the cast, but also just it goes back to the fact that even when people want to be supportive of underserved people in communities, because we know it's really hard for felons or, you know, ex-convicts or whatever to get jobs, even when people in the community want to provide those resources, they get their hands tied behind their backs as well. I think this episode revealed a lot of the systemic struggles that people go through when they are born at a disadvantage and they never can quite, or they struggle to get on the other side of things. So the other really interesting thing was Uncle Clifford woke up looking at Lil Murda like, because we know they finally did the do in the last episode. So I was like, oh, where is this going? What we talking about here? And Uncle Clifford passes out. Very Southern white woman. That was the much needed comic relief for me. This divorcee in this club chair spending all of her settlement money on these girls. I was like, what is going on with this lady? And it turns out that Lauren, her name, I kept looking like, okay, this woman must serve a function here if she keeps showing up over and over again in this episode. She was supposed to be the jukebox of the episode since they aren't in the club. They don't have their usual soundtrack. And this is, like I said, per the director's Twitter, that she was supposed to be the jukebox. Since they're outside of the club, they don't have the DJ to provide that music. That was the purpose of her singing throughout the episode. And we get to that part where we discover, oh, she can really sing. And it's like a thing. So I thought that that was really cool. But when she broke down crying and saying, like, you know, she didn't want to go back to this empty house. Whereas, you know, initially it was, oh, we're celebrating my divorce. And then like reality hit and she's not ready for it. And seeing Mississippi like kind of counsel her through this, I was like, I wonder how often dancers have to counsel people through their troubles that they come to like drink away or throw money at in a strip club. I would be very curious to know just how many times they've had to like counsel people, not just men. And I think it's also important to show that like women can really, you know, be into the strip club too, can really enjoy themselves in the strip club. And I, as a straight woman, you know, enjoy going to the strip club now and again, but then we find out the reason that Lauren got divorced is because she cheated on her husband with his mama. And I was like, where y'all pull that from? That was nuts. And the fact that she still won the settlement, I have so many questions about that, but like, okay, girl, I guess you got your coin. So Autumn's little scheme is on hold. She's at the money transfer place and they tell her, you know, you've reached your limit of transfers. And the woman tells her, you know, following the flood, we made it an exception for 2 months where people could do unlimited transfers because we wanted to help people be able to get money to their families. But that 2 months is up. And I felt like this was very timely because we're seeing right now in the pandemic where unemployment rates are skyrocketing. People don't really know what's going to be what because of COVID. And we got this $1,200 stimulus check if you got it. We've gotten these very temporary helps. And Autumn's response of, y'all expected for people to be back on their feet after only 2 months. And the woman was like, it was a courtesy and y'all should be grateful. That woman was the US government where it's, we're giving you crumbs and you better be grateful for these crumbs and whatever happens, happens. Now, what my question is where is all this money going? Where's she putting this money? I'm a little bit confused because it's some pretty large sums and I still haven't I'm not familiar with fraud. So I still have not completely figured out what exactly the end goal is here. But more on that later. The older lady in the jail, first of all, could you imagine? I feel like going to jail is a hellish experience anyway, but going to a co-ed jail nude, worst nightmare. Like it seems like a raw deal. And so I felt terrible for Mercedes. Not only did she miss her big night, her last dance, she also had to come in there half naked with all these people. And then her and her mom are in the same jail cell because this jail, the phone is broken. The bathroom, I think, is broken. A lock on one of the cells doesn't work. And then there's like a plumbing issue in another one. So it's like this town is a hot mess through and through. So the old lady, who doesn't even know what the story is with Mercedes and her mom, is just like, I don't care what she did. You don't disrespect your mama. That is so indicative. That woman is so indicative of elders in the Black community and this unyielding respect that we're supposed to have for our elders, regardless of how they make us feel, regardless of how they treat us. We're still supposed to just, bow down and pay deference and respect to them no matter what. And it's like, there's more to this story than you know. And interestingly enough, once Mercedes, like I said, is confronting her past, is confronting her issues with her mom, where her mom actually was the one to introduce her to using her body to get what she wants, and then also comes back and judges her for it. These are all things that she's confronting. The other thing that we learn in this jail cell is that where I was thinking that Michelle was the daughter's auntie or something like that, this is actually, Mercedes was actually this man's mistress, and this is their love child that this woman is raising. And I was really annoyed with Mercedes' mom and saying like, that forgiveness is what makes a woman godly. We have to stop connecting godliness or virtue to the extent to which a woman can endure emotional or spiritual or mental abuse or physical abuse from a man or from anyone for that matter. But I don't think that stupidity gets you closer to godliness, or not having boundaries makes you more godly, or not having standards makes you more godly. That's a huge misconception on a number of levels that we really need to work through. But what I saw someone on Twitter saying is that that man was probably much older than Mercedes, and Mercedes was probably like 18 when she had this girl, because they did the maths. I did not. That's not my thing. And it looks like they're going to dive more into that story, because apparently it's much more complicated than we're aware of at this juncture in the story. But I'm like, was she manipulated into this relationship with this older man? Like, what exactly was the tea on that? Yeah, I was really, I was like, ooh, they dropped a bomb. They slid it right on in there too. So more information. At the same time, Montavious, one of the men, or one of the names that Autumn used when she called, I guess, FEMA to see if this person's body had been found as a result of Hurricane Drake, which we found out is like this flood or whatever that happened. He shows up at the jail and he's looking for Autumn. I am terrified for her. I can't wait to see. It took everything in me to not get on IMDb and see who played this character, because I'm dying to know who it is. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. He does track her down, and we see at the end that somehow he has access to the accounts, so he can see that she's like transferring or laundering this money. I'm terrified about what's about to happen to Autumn. What I hope is that her and Mercedes team up and just beat this man's ass, but we'll see what happens. So Uncle Clifford, this is my first time actually being very clear on Uncle Clifford's pronouns, which are she, her, and Uncle Clifford is at the sheriff's office to, number one, figure out like what's going on with this eviction notice, especially because he's been paying him off in order to kind of keep things at bay. The sheriff really don't care. He's like, listen, honey, these folks don't care about you. I've done my part. You can go. But she also finds out that Mercedes is in jail and tries to go bail Mercedes out. And, Mercedes expresses that she's been more of a mother to me than you ever have. And this is when we hear the transphobic, like, that thing and da-da-da has been... It was very hard to hear, but I understand that it has to be realistic, and they are in this very small town where people, I'm sure, do not have very progressive views. I was hoping, because we were introduced to Uncle Clifford in this very like loving and admirable way, that people in the town were just accepting of her. They are not. And Mercedes does not allow her to use any of the money, because she's like, listen, you are in the hole for 55K, like, you need to be able to save the club. Like, I need, we need the club, even though Mercedes expresses, like, I'm not going back. I was like, okay, Jocelyn, girl, don't go back then. And Uncle Clifford, I don't know how, but I hope Uncle Clifford finds a way to save this club. Another really interesting thing that I discovered from following the showrunner on Twitter is that Uncle Clifford's looks, they're always, I mentioned before, there's always a theme, but the fact that the look that she was wearing this episode was an ode to Beyonce costume. I loved it. I just love a theme. I love a costume. I love purpose and intention. When Uncle Clifford goes to the barbershop where the mayor is and where Andre is, and the barber's name is Jonah, another flashback to the allegory of that biblical story. I admire Uncle Clifford's fearlessness in confronting people in spaces where she knows she's not welcome. I don't know that I would be that brave. And I really am just hoping that she finds a way to save this club, because not only for her, but for the people who rely on it. That's their source of income. That's the only place that they can go, or the only place they feel that they can go. So we'll see what happens there. It looks like Andre is catching on to the fact that his uncle is corrupt, but maybe doesn't really know quite what to do with that information. So we'll see what happens there. Again, I'm hoping that in the 11th hour they pull something off. Mercedes calls Gidget to get her out of jail. Gidget still feels away because of the way Mercedes spoke to her last episode. It looks like Gidget is taking care of an ailing relative. I'm assuming it may be her mom, but Gidget don't have no money. And I'm like, girl, call your man. He can't help you out here. So all the ladies gang up to try to put their money together for what they think is going to be just $2,000 to get Mercedes out of jail. But this is where we see how two things. Number one, you will always pay your debts. Your debts as a person, your financial debts, your spiritual debts. You gonna pay on the front end, or you gonna pay on the back end. Shouts out to Funky Dineva. Mercedes has to pay on the back end, because by the time they added up parking tickets and warrants and all this extra stuff that she had been putting off, it ends up being $5,000. And the ladies are like, listen, I just don't have it. And yeah, it sucks to see how people had a lot of criticism for Mercedes only having $20,000 saved. Let me say this. I make a decent amount of money at my day job, but I also live in New York City, where my rent is astronomical, food is astronomical. It's expensive to live. So if we're looking at Chucalissa, it's a fictional place, but it's in the Mississippi Delta. They aren't getting Magic City numbers. They're not getting the same clientele or money that a bigger strip club would have. And with Mercedes, clearly, I doubt that this $20,000 loan is the only money that she's given to her mom. I feel like she's probably shelled out a lot of money to her mom over this time. She has a house, she has a car. I'm not too judgmental of the fact that she only has $20,000 saved, but a lot of y'all really feel away to like, oh, she been stripping for this long and that's all she got. People who make quick money of any kind blow through it pretty fast. But I think for her to be in a very small town where I'm sure they're not seeing that many numbers, I think that's reasonable. But again, I struggle to save money myself with my regular job, my 9-to-5 job. I'm not out here making that kind of fast money, but I'm not standing in too much of judgment for her because of that. This area seems very economically distressed, so I was impressed that she even had $20,000 saved. But again, I'm a person who's not great at saving money, so that's my tea. Yeah, that made me sad, just thinking about people who get caught up, whether they should have been arrested or not or whatever. But the fact that it's so, you can buy your way out of so much more trouble, when you have money, and when you are financially oppressed and you get caught up, you get caught, you make a mistake, whatever, it's even harder for you to dig yourself out of that hole. I can't remember who said it. It might have been Ta-Nehisi Coates. I could be making that up, but someone said it's actually it's extremely expensive to be poor. And this is an example of that. And also the man who worked at the bail company, it's like, y'all got to pull up on him. Like, edit, you got to edit out. Oof. What a disgusting person. In my notes, I wrote down men are terrible. So, by the end of this episode, we see that Autumn bails Mercedes out, which I'm really happy to see them linking up. I'm happy to see them on the same side, because I never really quite understood why Mercedes has so much smoke for Autumn to begin with. It's like, girl, what did she do to you? What's the tea here? What the showrunner pointed out is that they've both endured the loss of a child in two very different ways. You know, Autumn's child is presumed dead in this flood. For all we know, that man might have found that baby and is holding that baby hostage. We'll see what happens there. But she lost her child in this flood. Mercedes couldn't get custody of her child, and Katori did hint that we'll get more details about why that is. And I mean, obviously, I'm sure in a town like that, they probably just didn't see her as a fit parent, you know, because she's a dancer. So I'm happy to see that they're linking up to pull off this fraud scheme, but I don't think this is going to end well. I also don't know what else they're going to do, but I don't think this is going to end well for them. It might, based on the way that Katori kind of worded that tweet where she was like, you know, they're both seeking this retribution that they both deserve. And this episode was about bringing them to the shore of their lives, basically, which is, once again, calling back to the story of Jonah and the whale. The last thing that I want to talk about is the conversation between Lil Murda and Uncle Clifford, where I think it's important that people understand that down low relationships don't always look how you think that they look. It's not always the out person who's pushing the other person to be out. Sometimes it's the other way around. There's a lot more nuance to those situations than I think people realize. Funky Dineva and Kid Fury, I think, have touched on this. Obviously, I think that they're more qualified as they are gay black men. I, as a straight black woman, I'm just going to say, I think that if we created more situations where people felt comfortable being themselves, you wouldn't have men who feel compelled to be on the down low. You wouldn't feel, there wouldn't be this desire to have this one life on the surface where you're the successful, you know, father and husband to a woman, and then on the side you have an illicit, you know, gay relationship. If we created more safe spaces for people to just be themselves, you wouldn't have this underworld of people who feel like they have to sneak around and hide. And I think that that was why Uncle Clifford was looking at Lil Murda like that the next morning, where it was like, this can only go so far, because he talks about like the gay bashing that has happened in that very small town, where it's like, where are we gonna go where it's gonna be safe? You know, are you willing to die for this? Because I'm not. And then, of course, they get caught by Mississippi, who, child, I was not expecting for Mississippi's baby daddy to be white. That shocked me. Not to say you can get abused by anybody, but I was genuinely shocked. And I was like, that's why Diamond keep threatening to beat this man ass. Again, this episode was packed with plot. I want to continue this conversation about the economics of sex work. I want you guys, drop down in the comments and let me know why you guys think Mercedes should have more than $20,000 saved. Let me know why that is, if that's how you feel, and if it's the reverse, let me know that too. So let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Do you guys have any predictions? How did you feel about this one? I thought that it was really well done. It was very plot heavy, like I said, but I quite enjoyed it. So be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.